Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Sanders, and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today, what I want to do is talk about two different kinds of watches that are similar in some ways, but very different in other ways. Price-wise, they have a lot of similarities. They're in sort of the low to mid thousands for the most part. They're both they both have five letters in their name, Tudor and Nomos. Uh, Tudor is Swiss, Nomos is German. There's but they're very different styles. Uh, Let me say, in looking at these two brands of watches, I don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. I own neither, but I find both of them very interesting. The Nomos is more of a considered a Bauhaus kind of design. I have a Harbring 2 Felix. It has a Bauhaus. The Tudor is more of a, more of a sports watch. This is my sports watch. This is a Roger Dubuis sports watch. So I have those kinds of watches, and so just to point out that I'm not favoring sports watches or Bauhaus watches. So let's take a look at these and some of the features of each one. Now, the first one that I want to talk about, I think this is relatively new. It's called the Pelagos 39 for 39 millimeters. Both of these watches now have calibers that are made, well, I'll call them in-house for some manufacturing. At one time, both of them started off with ETA movements, and then they developed their own movement. And yet they still have some. If you find a Tudor with a T number movement, just say T300 or whatever they have, it's going to be an ETA. What Nomos did is a little different. They have, I think it was called Alpha, which is pretty much the Nomos redesign of an ETA 7001. But for the most part, are the ones that we're going to examine, I sort of look at is a next step, sort of a step away from standard horology into strong horology. Both of these companies now make their own movements, and they're interesting movements. I mean, they're not sort of like we have a movement to say we have a movement. They do have some cooperation with other companies and some of them, but for the most part, their movements we're going to look at that they have are their own movements. So anyway, so you have the Pelagos 39 by Tudor, and you could just look at, I didn't even label them Tudor and Nomos because they're so clearly obvious differences between the two. And these two watches, the Pelagos 39, it's got they call MT for manufacturer Tudor 5400, COSC automatic unidirectional rotating bezel. That's sort of a diver type of watch. Now, on the other hand, the tangential Neomatic 39, 39 millimeters. The movement to have DUW, forgot what the DUW stands for, but anyway, it's got a 3001. If you're looking at a Nomos, all of the movements that have DUW are in-house movements on them. Now, the thing about Nomos that I do like, I tend to like lower frequencies, 2100, 18,000, something like that. Now, all of the Tudors are all 4 hertz, 28,800 semi-oscillations per hour. One isn't terrible and the other one is great. I just happen to like the slower ones, a little easier on the movement, and that's why I like them. Okay, now these are both 39 millimeters, so there's something to look at in terms of that. Clearly, the Nomos is more of what you'd call sort of a business watch, an office watch, whereas the Tudor is a sports watch. Now, the next two, this Ahoy Atlantic, this is a Nomos, and it has an interesting base to it. It's called a DUW 5001, but the base is an Epsilon. Now, Epsilon, Nomos used to use these Greek letters for the name of their movements, and the Epsilon was actually the first in-house manufactured movement by Nomos. It's automatic, 34-hour, and again, it has a frequency of 21,600 semi-oscillations per hour. This one, now, the Atlantic is their, I guess, the closest that you would come to a diver. They've got a pretty good depth to it, so it's the kind of thing you could strap on and jump in a swimming pool and not have to worry about it. $4,060. Now, the Black Bay, there's tons of Black Bays, and they've won tons of awards. This one is called the Black Bay Ceramic. It won the Petit Aiguille Award in 2021. This has got the caliber 5602-1U, COSC. What is COSC and so what? Okay, COSC is a chronometer certification. And so if you buy a watch with a COSC certification, that means it's been tested to a certain level of quality. Always a nice thing. Automatic, great for telling time. Now, this next two, now these are more sort of what I would call entry levels into strong horology. One thing, like I said, you have to watch out for sort of standard horology that you'll find in some of the lower priced ones. But for sort of the bottom level of both of these brands, these two watches offer, I think, pretty good value. The Ranger and Nomos Ranger is 39 millimeter case, caliber MT 5402 COSC, 4 hertz, 28,800. Clear as a bell. I like the hands on this. Just a nice, clean watch. These two watches are the closest that these two brands have watches that look very similar. Now, this one is called the Club Sport Neomatic Petrol. Petrol, this is a new watch, a new color. And it's why is it called Petrol? The dial has sort of that petrol green to it. You ever pour oil in a car or something, and boom, there you got you have that color for it. I like it. Now, this one's 37 millimeters instead of 39 or 40. So it's a little smaller. It's sort of, for me, it was 7¼ inch wrist. 37 millimeters is about the lower limit that I feel comfortable with. The DUW 3001 automatic 42-hour reserve. Again, 3 hertz, 21,600, 3,150. Well, both of these are right around $3,000. I like them both. Both of them are just nice watches, and again, like I said, they're good entry level for sort of getting into strong horology. Now, these next two are a little more complicated. Both of them have what I'll call well, they both have dual time. There's a lot of references to GMT, but it's dual time. And dual time means that you have more than one time zone. The way Nomos handles it, you can see at 9 o'clock it has the initials of a city, New York City, which happens to be the time zone I'm in. And then whatever, let's say the home time zone, whatever that happens to be. Now, over at 3 o'clock, you can see it. They have these numbers. Now, these are the 24-hour numbers. So it's 16 means it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That'd be 1600 hours. Now, this has got, again, the Epsilon base to it, which was the initial movement, but they have sort of two bases. The DUW 5201 has what's called the Nomos Glashütte XI, Xi, and there's those Greek numbers again. And then below that is epsilon. So the epsilon is the base. Then it was built up into the Xi, and then finally into DUW 5201. Interesting, interesting way of doing things. Now, the Black Bay Pro, I think this is another relatively new Tudor. This has got the calibers 56, 52 in it. Again, COSC automatic dual time. It's got a fixed bezel with a 24-hour time around it. And so if you want to look at the 24-hour time, you can look at the fixed bezel. Now, why that is important is that the dual time, the orange hand on it, what it's pointing to is the time in a 24-hour time zone. So it's a great one. This is also, you can have something like a Zulu time for it as well that uses 24 hours that pilots use. This one, steel bracelet, $4,000. The Tagomat GMT is $4,920. Both of them are for dual time. They do it differently, but they do it very efficiently. Okay, these last two that we're going to look at is the Black Bay Chrono, which is a chronograph by Tudor, and then the Zurich, which is a world timer by Nomos. Interesting thing about Nomos, they do not have a chronograph. As far as I'm concerned, a chronograph, I have a couple chronographs, but I really don't use them. And the subdials sort of clutter up the time. I like, you can glance at, well, this one's got perhaps not the most glanceable one. Something like this is more of a Nomos-like style in the harboring two feelings. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Chronographs are very popular. I like this chronograph. Now, the interesting thing about this chronograph is that the movement 5813 was developed jointly with Breitling. And they call their chronograph movement the B01. There's another movement that was essentially developed at Tudor that Breitling uses. So that's sort of going back and forth. I like that idea. I just sort of watch companies trying to get something really good for everybody. And so they trade technology. Now, the Nomos World Timer, that is, has a very similar kind of movement as the previous one that we had. We saw it had the city at over at 9 o'clock, and then it had the 24 hours at 3 o'clock. This has the same thing, except you go around and you can see all of the different time zones. So they're represented by cities. For example, at 9 o'clock is Mexico, that's time zone. And then the other ones there's a little pusher up at 2 o'clock that you use to move these different things around. Anyway, those are the two very similar, very different. They're similar in the price range. They're similar in that for the most part, their upper level ones all are in-house movements that were developed like the case with Tudor with another good watch company. Let me know what you think. If you have a Tudor or you have a Nomos, I'd like to hear your opinion of them. And this is an opportunity to subscribe if you like. Until next time, this is Bill Sanders, Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection.